Code, and today we'll be looking at some interview questions for Angular. And let's get into it. So the top 10 best Angular interview questions. This tutorial is essentially made to assist you in understanding the core concept of Angular development. The questions are answered so that it better places you to an advantage of not only securing your Angular job, but also help you grasp the core concept when writing your Angular code. And with that being said, let's get to the first question. One, the interviewer might ask you, are you a Angular or Angular JS developer? So what they're trying to gather here is, what is the difference between Angular and Angular JS? And the distinction will be Angular JS is the originator of Angular, and that's where it started, and then it evolved to Angular 2, which is then over the years has been developed to Angular TypeScript. And Angular sort of uses TypeScript, which has annotations and some static typing, whilst Angular JS uses JavaScript only. And because Angular is derived from Angular JS, it supports both JavaScript and TypeScript. So you get the best of both worlds and flexibility as well. And Angular has a CLI tool where you can write your commands, Angular commands, and you'll see that as we continue further. And if you want to see more of the Angular commands, I do have the Angular beginner tutorial. That is the code, the URL rather. I will add on the description below so that you guys can also see that in action. And AngularJS does not have a CLI tool, and the sort of JavaScript based. There's nothing fancy or an add-on that you would need for that. So see the next one. What are some of the Angular CLI commands? As we said, the Angular CLI has some commands. You have ng new, which generates a new Angular application, ng generate, generate your components, service, modules. So this will essentially scaffold any component that you want. It could be an interceptor, it could be an auth guard. So this you would use a lot of ng generate command for all of that. Then you have ng eject, which gets rid of Angular CLI scripts, and it adds a webpack script which is added in the package.json, and that will sort of help us to manually manage project configurations. And then we have ng build, which builds an application artifacts to the deployment target folder. So you'll see a dist folder. Once you run your ng build, you'll see a dist folder, and that's where your deployment artifacts will sit. And then you have ng serve, which runs an Angular application. So it builds, watches, and serves the application. So if you're running on local and you want to make some changes, you don't need to restart the server. You can just update the code, and then you will see it reflect the changes on the fly. Let's go to the next one and explain the difference between an annotation and a decorator. So annotations are hard-coded language features. So an annotations property defined to a component would tell the component object how it should behave based on the properties you define in the annotations array. So these annotations actually they get stored into the annotations array, and annotations sort of use the reflect metadata library, and in such a setting, annotation is just difficult to code, whilst decorators are super easy. So a decorator is a function that adds the metadata to the class or its members, or the method arguments. So your decorators, you easily define how the class should behave, and that's much more efficient, I think, than annotations, so you get that benefit. And then with decorators, you have your class decorators, you have your property decorators, you have method decorators, and you have parameter decorators. And if you want to see all of these in action, I recommend that you go and see my Angular tutorial, which has a lot of these decorators being played around, sort of being used and implemented in which situations you can take this into account. And let's go to the next one. What is lazy loading? Lazy loading is a design pattern that loads ng modules as needed. So you'd call modules as and when needed, and because of this, lazy loading helps keep initial bundle sizes smaller. And you see this come into play with the response time of your application. Because the bundle size is smaller, the response, the performance is much more better, and the user experience is much more improved. So it helps decrease the load times of your application, which is what each user or every user is looking for. So this means that Angular loads components asynchronously when a specific route is activated. So routing to different components and different modules is much more easier. So this method is very helpful in complex applications with multiple routes and modules. So if you're building like an enterprise application, then you would want to jump on this bandwagon and sort of implement this design pattern, then that will improve significantly on the performance, and especially if you're like deploying your application to like a cloud instance, because with cloud, besides having the region being closer, you would also want the application itself to be much better with its response. So what are the key components of Angular? So the key components of Angular are components, modules, and templates, services, metadata, and decorators. So these are the actual backbone of Angular. And with components being the basic UI building block, essentially the components have, if you check the decorator for a component class, the metadata would have your selector, it will have your template, which is the HTML, and would have your CSS or the styles, which is the CSS for that particular component. And then you have module, which is the logical boundaries in your application. So if you are familiar with backend, module will essentially define or will be your typical package, if I put it that way. So this will tell your application which components fall into which module, and that's how it is. And then templates, as I mentioned, it's an HTML view where you display data by binding controls of the template to properties of an Angular component. So this is where you bind the data that is coming from your component being served from your backend side, and you fetch the data, you push that to your HTML view, and it gets displayed accordingly, and then the user will interact with the template. And then a service is typically a class with a well-defined purpose. It should do something specific and do it really well. So if you look at my Angular tutorial, we do use a number of services, and one that is easier to reference will be the dialog service, because it only does one particular thing and it does really well. So if I want to show a model, I call dialog service, give me a model, dialog service, give me a snack bar. Then I can flip the switch on either one, and that's what the power of services are. And then the metadata is defined in the components, is to decorate a class so that it can configure the expected behavior of the class. And TypeScript decorator defines this, and it sort of gives the class how it should look like. And you would see this in components, and in action when you start writing code. And I really do recommend that you go watch a tutorial if you're unclear of something, and you will see all of this in action. And with that being said, guys, this is where we ended, and we're going to continue this series. We only have 2 episodes, so the next one will go on the other 5. So please do like and subscribe for more code. Cheers. Thank you.